Serious, people who have almost been in the wrong place at the wrong time. What almost happened? When I was 12, me, my mom, and my sister went to a dollar store late at night after a school play she had. Right when we went in, a car pulled up in the parking lot and my mom got paranoid and rushed us in and out to get candy and a soda. Right when we left, two men got out of the car and speed walked into the store. The next morning we saw on the news that the store was robbed by them. I guess they waited for us to leave before they did it. I bet they left with a whopping $6. There had been a couple of armed robberies around my route home from work, which I usually walked. One of my co-workers, who lived in the same apartment building as me, was nervous about going home after dark, so I agreed to switch shifts with her so that she could get off in the afternoon and I'd take closing. I found out the next day that she'd been mugged and shot after her shift. She didn't die, thank God, but the fact that I should have been the one walking that same route freaked me out for a while. Oh god, this is just bad luck. She just wanted to avoid harm. Almost forgot to wear my helmet before taking the scooter out for a ride in the country. I hit a deer that day. EMTs and shock trauma hospital doctors agreed that I'd be dead had I not worn that helmet. I was doing orientation videos at the Kroger company I had just been hired at. I had gotten enough done for the day, but still had some time left, so I decided to do just a couple more. In the time that I was doing that, someone had bought a kitchen knife and asked the clerk to remove the zip ties. You know, the ones that you have to take a knife or scissors to. He thought it was a little strange, but complied. He then walked out the door and started stabbing random folks in front of the store, talking about how you took my people's land anyhow. A regular there, real road warrior looking guy, always carried a Bowie knife and, apparently, a permitted concealed handgun. He drops his groceries he's bagging in self-checkout, walks outside and pulls his gun and tells the guy to get on the ground. I walk out and find the door I'd usually exit through taped off and find out about the whole thing a few minutes later. My friends wanted to hang out but I didn't like them anymore because they were druggies, so I made an excuse. By hang out they meant beat a jogger to death with hammers while his wife watched. They all got life in prison. I sometimes think if I would have been able to stop them. When I was about 13, I came home from playing outside, entering the house into the kitchen through a side door. I walked through the kitchen and into the front of the house, and started up the stairs. Halfway up the stairs, I heard a crazy loud metallic clanging, like pots and pans were falling, and falling and falling. I came running downstairs to find that the pressure cooker top had popped off, shooting into the ceiling, and the pressure release propelled the cooker into the living room, smashing into a wall and rolled to a stop in front of my dad on the couch. The whole time it was spewing boiling chicken grease, as my mom was making chicken soup. Had I come in 10 seconds later, I would have probably been disfigured from grease burns and maybe been hit by the flying cooker itself. This the exact reason you have to be extremely careful with pressure cookers. They can be so freaking dangerous if mishandled or if you forget to monitor it. In my sophomore year of high school, my older cousin was getting married. I'd originally talked my mum into letting me stay home that weekend instead of traveling the 7 hours to the event. I was going to go with some friends to a basketball game for something to do on Friday night. But on Thursday my mum decided I couldn't miss the wedding and made me go with the family Friday after school. Friday night after we got to the hotel I got a phone call. My friends that I was going to ride with to the basketball game were in a bad car accident. 2 died. It took years of survivor's guilt to get over that because those 2 would have driven in a different car if I'd been there. Going back home from the bakery with my aunt. For some reason she decided to cross the street, which was unnecessary cause my house was on that same sidewalk. As soon as we crossed the street, a car crashed at that very same place we were, breaking into our house. The driver was absolutely drunk. I was like 6 or 7 when it happened. In the car with my father-in-law, husband, and baby boy, Phil was driving us to lunch. We were the first car at a red light. The light turns green but he hesitated to go for about a second and a half. For absolutely no reason. A car ran the red light and would likely have killed my Phil and husband at the speed it was going. And since it was on a hill, we likely would have rolled too. Highway patrol just getting off the interstate saw the entire thing and pulled the driver over immediately. This same thing happened to me a few weeks ago. Light turns green and for some reason I hesitated and a car sped through the red light and would have totaled me and my car. Sometimes I feel like there's something that tells us to hesitate, like we know that's coming, as weird as that sounds. Typical cartoon scene of a flower pot flying off a balcony. It fell right where I was standing 1 minute earlier. I had since moved a couple of steps, but another guy was in that spot. It grazed his shoulder and would have been really dangerous if it hit him on the head. We called the cops on the guy since we saw other vases on his balcony. Dude was very pee but took them in. The dude obviously had a cat. My family vacationed in Paris for a week in the mid-90s. I was about 10 years old. My mom and stepfather were planning to go to the Arc de Triomphe on a certain day, but I wanted to go to the Eiffel Tower. When I was told we would see the Eiffel Tower another day, I threw a fit. Don't know why it was so important to see the Eiffel Tower that day and not 2 days later. It became a whole argument between me, my stepfather, and my mom. My mom caved to probably just shut me up, and we went to the Eiffel Tower that day, and my stepfather was pee the rest of the day for my mom caving. We got back to the hotel and saw that a pipe bomb had gone off near the Arc de Triomphe and a bunch of people got hurt. The last we spoke to any other family was before the fight, and my stepfather told them we were going to the Arc de Triomphe that day and they were frantically calling the hotel to try and get a hold of us. So my brattiness might have saved us from a pipe bombing. Yesterday the metal awning on the food truck I was approaching collapsed to the wind and slammed into the sidewalk. I almost got sandwiched while trying to get a sandwich. In high school my friend was supposed to go to a party with his best friend. He decided he was too tired and wanted to stay home and sleep. The next morning his mom wakes him up to tell him his best friend was shot and died. Was in Branson last week on vacation with my wife. Had a thought about riding a duck boat on Thursday. Decided to play mini golf instead. The boat capsized, killing 17 people. 9 from one family, comma. Was supposed to drive this narrow route back to base for refuel and food and water. We were at one end and our sister company was trying to come from the opposite end to leave the base. They demanded to go first. My buddy just so happened to be the driver in their point vehicle as I was for us. He hit an IED and died. I watched. Miss you, ski. Lock shields. I'll be thinking of you and ski all day. I hope you're doing alright. One day I was visiting my mom's work for the day at around 8 AM or so. I forgot why, but since I didn't eat breakfast I was starving, so I asked my mom if she could take her lunch break and we could go somewhere to eat. We eventually did, and when we got back there were police cars around the building and we weren't allowed into it. After it was over we heard that some crazy lady threatened someone with a knife and gun right next to my mom's office, and we would have been right in the middle of that if I wasn't hungry at that exact moment. I just got off a bus stop near my home. My mom worked up the block where my stop was. I called her and she said that she was gonna pick me up. As I waited outside the stop by a 7/11, I noticed a few guys outside the 7/11 who seemed off. 5 minutes later much more showed up. I assumed gang members, so I kept my distance. My mom picked me up and we left for home. As soon as I got in, I saw another group of guys walking up to the 7/11. We pulled away. Next morning we turned on our local news and saw there was a gang-related shooting at that 7/11. When I was 2 years old back in 2001, I lived in California, but my mom and I were visiting my grandparents in New York. My dad was back in California because he was on call as an ent. My mom and I said goodbye to my grandparents and went to Newark International Airport on the 11th of September, holding tickets for American Airlines Flight 93, which was of course one of the planes involved in the attacks. We only cancelled our flight and scheduled a later one because my dad was operating on a patient and wouldn't have been able to pick us up in time in San Francisco. If my dad hadn't been called to the hospital, we would have boarded Flight 93 and crashed in Somerset, Pennsylvania. Most of the time when you hear about 9/11 close calls it has to do with the Twin Towers. I don't know if I've ever heard anyone say they didn't board that flight. Glad you didn't. I grew up in a town with lots of hills. At the bottom of the hills, you could only see the top of the next hill. At the top, you could see a few miles into the distance. I was driving home from school one day. At the top of one hill, I saw some jackass cresting the next hill. He was trying pass another car, on a double yellow, on a hill. If I had been one hill down the road, we would have both been dead. I still hate driving on that road. A buddy and I were going fishing, had to take a highway similar to the one you described. We popped a hill and some jackbutt was in both lanes. Luckily enough my friend had just enough time to dodge the poor driver. We would have hit him head on if I didn't forget my pack of cigarettes on the table. It took me 1 second to grab. If I would have remembered my smokes we would have hit him head on. I dodged being in the wrong place by being in a different wrong place. I was supposed to go study abroad in Istanbul while I was in college. I was going abroad in the spring semester of my junior year, but I broke my back in an accident during the summer beforehand. I was on pain meds and barely able to move, so I had to withdraw from the program. During the period I would have been flying into Istanbul for my program, there were several bombings in the airport. At the time, I took morbid comfort in the fact that my junior year of college would have sucked either way. When I was about 3 or 4 years old I was with my mom and my older brother, 5 or 6, and we were on our way home and she decided to stop at the grocery store. I was asleep in the car and she had my brother just stay with me with the doors locked as she ran in to get some milk. For some reason while she was walking into the store she decided to go back to the car and bring us in with her. Well, 5 minutes later we paid for the milk and walked outside to see our car was on fire. Turns out there was a new heated seat feature on the car my parents just bought 2 weeks prior and it malfunctioned. I vividly remember getting driven home by a nice police officer and then my mom was on the phone with her parents for hours crying about what could have been. Parents seem to have such an instinct for that, it's weird. I got off one of the tubes which was attacked in the 7th of July London bombings. I was a teenager doing work experience in London and I remember seeing American tourists getting on the tube as I got off and thinking about it freaked me out for a long time after. I have a friend who was actually an American tourist on the tube when that happened. They didn't get injured directly but they're still struggling with PTSD from it. I was out with some of my friends downtown for my 21st birthday celebrating and getting drunk. Everything was going well until we started to get a weird vibe from the club that we were in. We decided to call it a night as it was getting close to last call. My girlfriend picked us up to drive us home, and when we woke up the next morning we saw something interesting on the news. Some guy had shot randomly into the crowd hitting 4 or so people right outside of the bar that we were at 5 minutes after we left. We narrowly avoided being right in the middle of it. So, I have a bad history with log trucks. I physically cringe with my entire body when I see one and either speed up or slow down to stay far from it. I've almost been killed by 3 of them. TLDR. Almost ran under one chasing a ball. Almost crushed by one driving in my line at a stop sign. Final destinationed myself right into the back of one. All by the time I was 19. First time, when I was, maybe 4, my pawpaw was watching me play in the front yard of their trailer. They lived right on a major 2-lane back road between 2 very small towns that saw a lot of traffic. He must have zoned out for a moment, because I rolled a ball into the road and chased it, just as a log truck came flying down the road. When he realized what happened he stood up and screamed for me to stop. I stopped and, according to my family because I've blocked this out at this point, the truck slammed its brakes and slid right past me as I stood on the opposite side of the yellow line. My parents said Pawpaw nearly had a heart attack that day from the experience. Second time, I had my license for about a year, 18, and was driving down a back road that came to a stop at another back road. My older, 30, friend W was in the passenger seat. As I'm coming to a stop, maybe 50 feet from the stop sign, there's a logging truck coming onto the road through my lane, as trucks tend to do sometimes. My instinct kicked in quick and I nonchalantly drove us into the ditch as we slid past each other so that the truck wouldn't hit us. I'm annoyed and cursing and pulling the car back onto the road, and I look over and W is just white as a ghost. Dude, what's wrong? Do you not realize what just happened? If you hadn't moved his truck would have crushed your side of the car. It took a while for that one to sink in. Third time, it's a year later from the last time. I'm 19, and I'm going down yet another busy back road right up the road from my parents' house to see my boyfriend at the time. I'm going down a hill around a sharp turn, maybe 50 plus mph. In front of me as the trees clear from my view on the left side, I realize the truck is slowed almost completely to a full stop. I had just enough time to slam my brakes and slide right into a pine tree hanging off the back of his truck, breaking through my windshield. The log came about 8 inches away from hitting me in the head. How do I know it was a pine tree? When I got to my boyfriend's house, I drove 15 minutes to him rather than 5 back to my parents' house because I knew I was about to get grounded. I was in such shock that when I brought him out to look at the car, I started crying, laughing at the pine needles stuck in the hole in my windshield. So yeah, frick logging trucks. Got in the car with my dad and bro. Dad drives and 1 minute later boom. A suicide bomb just exploded on an American vehicle at the exact same place our car was parked at. This was 14 years ago in Iraq. It's sad that we live in a world where people talk about nearly being killed as child by a suicide bomber. I'm sorry you experienced that. There was a domestic dispute in front of my house from our neighbors. I was around 12 and was putting up posters in our block for something. The domestic dispute from the couple escalated from a shouting match to a shoving match, and the guy involved was drunk and quite unhinged. Our babysitter pulled me inside back into the house just as the guy was about to approach me. She thought that the neighbor was going to use me in a hostage situation type and grabbed me and slammed the yard gate on his face. I got yelled at by the babysitter and my mom about minding my surroundings, but not as much as the babysitter giving our neighbor a stern warning. Cops were later called on the couple. It was a bit unfair for you to get in trouble for that, but I hope it did its job. I've got one from just the other day. My boss called me before I was about to head to work asking me if I wanted to work my shift at a different store cause one of their drivers called out. I said sure and started heading that way. About halfway there, my boss calls back and says that they found someone else to take the shift and I could just come to my regular store. A few hours into my shift, my boss comes in and tells me he was visiting that store, and the driver that took the shift I was gonna work got slammed into by a Prius while he was parking, totaling his car. I know things may have gone differently if it was me, but still that was pretty wild to hear. When my sister was in college, her boyfriend was having a party on a yacht and all her friends were going to be there. She didn't go because she had to study for her test the next morning. Everyone on the boat got very drunk and crashed the boat. A few people including her boyfriend died. When she was helping his mother clean out his dorm room, they found an engagement ring in a drawer. And now I'm uber sad, comma. My dad has ridden motorcycles for as long as I can remember, and he used to ride with a group of his friends and I'd tag along on the back of his bike. One of the rides was planned months in advance by his best friend and I wanted to go so bad. I was 10. I brought it up every single day to my dad how excited I was, and he planned out which order the 8 bikes would be in. We would be 4th. The night before we were supposed to go, I changed my mind because I didn't want my mom to be alone at home with access to my backpack. It had notes in it and I had gotten in trouble for passing notes before. I decided I'd stay home to make sure she didn't find them. Told my dad I wasn't going, and he rearranged his bike position to first instead. A few hours into the ride, my mom gets a frantic call from him that there was an accident. It was his best friend. His best friend was the 4th bike. A truck pulling out into an intersection saw the first 3 bikes, then pulled out and hit and killed the 4th. Everybody else was fine. I still hold a lot of guilt because that was supposed to be me. I could have gone and I probably would have taken a bathroom break or done something that put us behind schedule so the truck wouldn't have hit him. This year makes 10 years and I still feel like I should have gone. You never know with these things. Maybe if you had gone with them, some other chain of events might have happened that resulted in an even worse outcome. We can only wonder, but I hope you and your dad are coping okay. In the weeks before 9/11, I was looking for work in NYC. I had interviewed with a firm that serviced clients on Wall Street. All of their clients were in the Twin Towers. I held off accepting their offer, as I felt I could do better. Had I accepted it, I almost certainly would have been in the WTC buildings on 9/11. A couple of weeks after 9/11, I called the company that made the offer. The person on the other end of the line was subdued and somewhat incoherent, with odd noises in the background. I never learned the fate of that company, but I'm pretty sure their recovery was a rocky one, if they survived the aftermath intact. What do you mean by odd noises? Playing in the rain during a progressive thunderstorm. Climbed a tree, had to poop, went inside to do my business. While on the crapper the power went out. Turns out lightning struck the tree I was climbing and a branch took out our power lines. Saved by nature's call. Thought this was gonna be a pooping in tree disaster. My girlfriend and I were vacationing in Branson just 2 weeks ago, and we rode the very same boat on the ride the Ducks tour that sank in a storm only 5 days later. I was out with my brothers riding bikes and this dude pulled up to us with a gun because he thought I looked like someone that killed his brother. Okay, now you have to tell us how you de-escalated this. A few years ago, we were going bar hopping in Baltimore for my buddy's bachelor party. We got down there nice and early so we could go grab some dinner and not get stuck in rush hour traffic. This was the night of the riots for Freddie Gray. We decided to go out anyway and just try to avoid the areas where we heard there was trouble. We were a group of 5 or 6 white dudes who were absolutely smashed and ended up pretty close to the action after getting separated from our group. A guy stops us and says, "Look, it's getting pretty crazy up that way," pointing to where we were walking, "and people are getting out of control. It's probably not safe for you white guys to walk through there. I'd take other route." We thanked him and went to grab pizza. The next morning, we saw that a couple guys got the crap kicked out of them about 1-2 block away from where we were by a group of rioters. If you're reading this, thank you stranger. When I worked at Six Flags, they would have employee appreciation nights where the park would close early and we would get to ride the rides and get free carnival food. One of these evenings it had been kind of stormy on and off, and there had been some thunder warnings and flash flood warnings in other parts of the city, unknown to the employees. Nobody bothered to get the word out or think, "Hey, let's reschedule this." I was tired from work and opted to go home instead of riding the nearby superhero coaster. A few days later I was alerted to having to cover a shift for a co-worker who had been on the superhero coaster when it was struck by lightning. Everyone had to be rushed to the ER with burns and messed up vitals. Thankfully there were no deaths, but the riders were hurt pretty badly. Had I stayed and ridden the coaster I would have been shocked with everyone else. On a lighter note, I was visiting home from school once and my plane landed early so I was able to get out of the airport 30 minutes earlier. Soon as we get home there's a story on the news about an escaped baboon in the airport, happening precisely at the time I was supposed to arrive, so I narrowly missed getting jumped by a monkey. My dad's best friend was taking a job interview one day in September. He lived in NYC, so he took the subway. They were blocked up, so he was 30 minutes late. His interview was at the Twin Towers. It was the 11th of September. By being late to his appointment, he wasn't killed in the attacks. He was still in an underground train station when it happened. He tells that story to this day. Me and my loved ones had some divine local intervention. We were out partying one night in Bali, Indonesia. It was a beauty of a night and it was midnight. We were all inebriated to the max and wanted to kick on to a renowned club, the Sari Club. The taxi driver would not have a bar of it. Kept saying, "No, I take you home." We were just kids, complaining, drunk, offering more money, etc. 2 hours later we hear and feel a massive explosion. You know that deep rumble you can even feel in your heart? We woke up to the news of 204 people dead. 2 bombs blew up in the 2 clubs. A further 209 were injured. The airport was absolute heck the next day. Apparent motive was retaliation for United States support of war on terror and Australia's role in the liberation of East Timor. When I lived in Chicago, I was crossing an intersection on Michigan Ave during the walk symbol, and some ashat on a bike ran the red and drove straight into the woman 1 foot in front of me. He flew over his handlebars. IDK if he was hurt, but I hope he was. The lady was paralyzed on the ground and I helped stabilize her neck until the ambulance came. If I has been faster, it would have been me. We went to the beach with all my cousins when I was little. All of us would compete to see who could swim out the farthest. Stupid I know, but we were kids. After the last day of beach fun we packed up and headed home, where we learned that at the same beach just an hour or so after we had left there had been large sharks spotted in the deeper ends and everyone had to leave the water for a bit. Oh boy, your or one of your cousins could have been chum. I was hanging out with these two guys one summer. I knew them in high school. They were 17. I think. I was 18 at the time. We were supposed to go out one night and hang out with these people. We had hung out with them the week before and it was pretty crazy. The Friday night, we were supposed to hang out with these people. I even got off work early that night to go out with them. I had a bad feeling that night and decided to stay home. Apparently that night they got pulled over with C in their car. They were arrested and in lots of trouble. If I had been in that car, I could have ruined my life with a drug charge. Last year I was almost in the midst of the terror attack in Stockholm, Sweden. I was on my way home from work, and usually, almost every Friday, I went to the exact store that the truck ended up crashing into. This day however I had decided to wait for a co-worker so we could walk together a bit and then go directly home instead. At first I didn't realize what had happened, watching the smoke rise barely a block from where I was standing. On top of that I missed the last train allowed to leave the city center. First I tried getting a taxi, but there were so few that were still taking passengers so ended up going back to my workplace just to feel safe until late that evening. Felt like forever standing there watching the smoke and hearing people scream, run and hearing and seeing sirens. It was probably not long at all, but everyone was terrified and it truly warped my time perception. When I was 9 or 10 I was sneaking into the kitchen for a midnight snack just as a stranger walked into the lounge that was connected to the kitchen. I hid in a cupboard where we stored brooms and stuff and was there for what felt like hours. Eventually I got out and being the dumb child that I was, I didn't wake up my parents or anything. I just went back to bed without my midnight snack. In the morning we found out that the thief had taken our TV, iMac and some other expensive technology, but luckily it was all insured. I didn't tell my parents about it at the time because I was scared that it would mean the police would ask me questions and potentially arrest me lol despite me doing nothing wrong lol. Officer, arrest this 4th grader for the crime of midnight snack sneaking. I was like 7 or 8 and I had a guy ask me for directions at the library and asked me to come outside to show him which way to go. I called my dad because I couldn't remember, and when I told the guy my dad would talk to him and help me, he got spooked and said never mind and walked off really quickly. 15 years later and I still remember it. My girlfriend and I decided to not take the duck tour last week because it was too expensive and we were on a budget. Just happened to be the day that a duck boat sank and killed 17 people. I think that I've told this before in another thread. My grandparents babysat me a lot before I started school. I was maybe 4 years old or so. One day I was looking around my grandparents' house, trying to find my grandpa. I found him sitting on his bed, holding the barrel of a handgun in his mouth. I don't know how long he had been there like that. But if I hadn't have seen him and called out to him when I did, I could have either witnessed his suicide or found him after hearing the gunshot from another room. Nobody really talks about the incident, and through context clues that I've deciphered from my memories of him, and things that have been said about him by my grandma, mom, and aunt that are unrelated to the suicide attempt, he was a functioning alcoholic. He died of diabetes-related kidney failure when I was 14. I was at a demolition derby a couple years ago with my family, lots of little kids. We got a feeling that we should get up and move seats and go sit with family on the other side of the arena. About 10 minutes after we moved, a truck was rolled over and the driveline on the truck got ejected into the crowd right where we would have been seated. 3 people experienced major injuries and it could have killed the little children that were with us. If you are new to the channel, you can subscribe. I publish new videos every day. Until then, check another video. Bye for now.